Last year, I did a program at the end. I thought that it's nice to do the same again. So here we go. Let me show the works by people I have covered. Call it a review, if you will. First, allow me to talk about the platform. There are lots of talks these days about YouTube manipulating recommendations and ads based on opinions. Signs are everywhere and nothing is done about it. For me, it's upsetting to see YouTube putting ads on my program while not sharing the take with me. However, when the negative feelings wore off, I thought that it's just another sign of our times. Some of my friends who have hundreds of thousands of views for each video said that their videos were automatically yellow labeled for the period that they received most of the views. They depend on the YouTube income. I don't, so what do I have to complain? We're living at a time that people openly don't do what they promise. It is a time for large entities such as the government and big companies to openly play the game of world domination. Individuality, gentlemanly behavior, sportsmanship, and limited government are out of fashion. Hell of a shame. For someone coming from the communist China, the granddaddy of brainwashing, which has recently issued an official white paper insisting that only the Chinese dictatorship was a real democracy in the world, the US is really playing this game at the kindergarten level in comparison. Have you noticed so many comments going against the so-called top 1% these days? Come on, they are the top 1%, wanting your help so they could take more, by manufacturing inflations, discouraging entrepreneurship, burdensome government regulations, high gas prices. The list is endless, and we the people are paying them to do this to us. If you don't see it, let me give you an example. When the government spends $3 trillion supposedly on us, each 4-people family is supposed to get $40,000. Did you see that money? I didn't. I heard that the latest law is to require banks reporting all $600 transactions to the government. Let's not worry about the mess and cost. Is this law really aimed at the top 1%? Let's be real. Those who fall into the trap of establishment needs to look at what they're getting. Higher inflation, higher crime rate, higher illegal immigration, higher danger for all civilized people world over. The 1% are impacted the least by those things. Let me end this by saying that Hitler would have been just a crazy loser making speeches at soup stands if there hasn't been the Hitler Youth and SS. The Chinese government, as I speak, are using AI technologies to predict the thoughts and behaviors of its people. The DNA drugs to alter their thoughts are being tested, very much helped by the American academics. When are those things coming to America? Yes, this is the modern art program. But if I know anything about modern art, it's about expressing new ideas in new styles, thus enriching the culture. The key word here is new, meaning not going with the trend. Therefore, for anyone without tension, which is a modern art term, or the struggle in search of truth, it is next to impossible to create great art. Actually, I'm okay with a small channel because this is just my study notes, not any big deal. When I started it, I didn't realize that painting is so time-consuming. I was probably misled by those YouTube videos where things are invariably done in 15 minutes or a few hours in real time. With the channel so small, I don't feel bad to delay Matisse and Picasso for a while. Also, I like the feeling that I can acknowledge comments, only hoping that my acknowledgements are not too annoying. In any case, the only obligation I feel is to express some opinions that YouTube tries to discourage. This year, like last year, nothing much happened beyond painting for me due to this China virus, which the Chinese government said that it is the US virus. Maybe the best way to label it is that this is a virus invented in the Wuhan lab with the US taxpayer funds. You might call it a match made in hell. For the mainstream press, nothing of this sort ever happened, so they don't care about this happening again. Another sign of our time. For me, the first part of virus allowed me to accelerate my basic training. Then, in March 2021, painting started. The virus is really a good example of our times in more ways than one. For instance, other viruses are named by their originating locations, just like this one. But the World Health Organization changed Wuhan virus to COVID-19, sounding like some super sophisticated government establishment designed to screw the people. WHO's advisories aren't so hot either. This is not uniquely WHO. When Peng Shuai, a tennis champion, accused sexual abuse by a Chinese official, the tennis organizations responded by suspending games in China. But the International Olympic Committee told the world that Peng was fine, seeing her asking the world to respect her privacy with a smile, while nobody could locate her. Anyone with the least common sense should feel chills running through their spines. But the IOC is going to practice silence democracy as well as many governments, while holding a sporting orgy in Beijing as China's propaganda puppet. The new Olympic spirit is obviously to have the innocent youth to prop up dictators and sexual abusers. Is the world hopelessly corrupt or ridiculously naive? You tell me. I recently quoted W.B. Yeats to a friend. When I later checked the quote, I found that I missed by a lot. Here is what he actually said, I quote, "The best lack all convictions, while the worst are full of passionate intensity." End of quote. It is certainly easy to go with the trend, and hard to go against it. On that account, this is not an easy time for modern artists. I think that I showed my admiration for Donald Trump in one of the episodes and got some criticism. Actually, at a higher level, it doesn't matter what he did, as long as he came out and did something against the trend. Anything at all, he would earn my admiration. From my perspective, he didn't do half that bad. The economy was good, especially better for lower income, because he was about to turn the poor against the establishment and break the 200-year lock on the black votes, according to Lyndon Johnson, who actually used the N-word. The entire Washington turned out against Trump, Democrats and Republicans alike. Another sign of our times. People find fault with my opinions. That is good, even desirable. But for those viewers, I want to explain how I come to those views. For me, with the full hindsight view, I must admit that I lived a privileged life in China, as I was allowed to explore things that fit my curiosity. If anything, the society only helped me. For example, when Mao sent the intellectuals to the countryside to be out of his way, I was sent to elementary schools with the kids of local peasants. The education I got there was not much more than none. Still, once I had a math problem and randomly asked an adult, who sat down on the side of a dirt road and used a stick as a pen to write on dirt, to explain it to me. One passerby saw this and laughed, saying to me, "Do you know you're having the best mathematician in the country to explain this ridiculously simple problem to you?" When I came to the US as a graduate student, I found that the physics textbooks are written to teach necessary math, but not to explain physics. So I asked the department to cut me some slacks so that I could write a book about the physics, covering quantum mechanics, statistical mechanics, classical or Newton mechanics, and electromagnetism, without worrying about math coverage, pretty much like what I'm doing now with modern art in this channel. I was then a naive kid, freshly escaped China, thinking that the American universities were great places for free creation and exchanging of ideas. To make a long story short, a professor took me to his office and prefaced his talk to me with "you Chinese students," as if you Europeans or you Americans could be a proper way to draw conclusions on a particular individual. By a sequence of odd chances, I started to write columns for the student newspaper called the Cavalier Daily, which was funded exclusively by advertisement. The paper printed a Jefferson quote every day. Quote, "For here, we are not afraid to follow the truth wherever it may lead, nor to tolerate any error so long as a reason is left to combat it." End of quote. Later, I hosted a radio talk show at the WTJU radio station, W. Thomas Jefferson University. The Cavalier Daily and WTJU gave me spaces to breathe and chances to learn English, which benefited me tremendously. I owe my English to the generous undergraduate students, but learned next to nothing about physics there. The university only cared about the cheap labor in me. The university practiced a kind of racism. Generally speaking, white students were typically allowed to get their degrees in 5 years, but many Chinese students spent 10 years to get the same piece of paper. After my 5th year, Arthur Brill, who called himself my mentor, told me that I needed to work for another 5 years. I went to talk to the chairman of the department, who told me that Brill was acting within his academic freedom. The advice was for me to work as long as the asshole required. Hearing what happened, Brill fired me. Yes, that was the word he used. So the options for me was either 5 years or no degree, not even a master's degree, or starting again with another professor. That was a time when I realized how so many professors switching at the end of the 5th year took place. They were not at all caused by the changing of interests, as they were represented to me. PhD programs are really hell, I tell you. It took me a few years to recover from the psychological damages and get my confidence back. I then talked to a friend in Washington who called Brill to promise him that if he did not give me a master's degree, my friend would make sure that Brill would not see another penny from the federal government. So I now hold an MS degree in physics, an uncommonly award that was unnecessary for any of my future pursuits. Now I'm happy that Thomas Jefferson University screwed me so despicably, so a decision to drop my professorial career plan was automatic. I walked away with the "give me liberty or give me death" ringing in my head. I talked to a friend recently about the Chinese academics always yielding to the demand of the Communist Party. He said that it is because that the academics do not have any marketable skills in the real world, so they feel that being fired is a death sentence. It also explains their socialist leanings. They are scared of the market, where one exchanges honest work for market rewards. I'm happy that I left academics early enough so I could live without any antipathy to the free market. By the way, Brill threatened me that I would not get a job without his favorable recommendations, so I made sure that nobody called him. Before that episode to me, a Chinese student killed his professor and a couple of innocent people. When we regretted his move at the home of a fellow Chinese graduate student, his wife rushed out of the kitchen. I cannot repeat what he said, for that doesn't only violate YouTube's community standards, but also mine. Wherever my brain was, my heart, I must admit, was with her. Nothing is more evil for the elder to ask the trust of the young and then betray it so blatantly. Years later, when I took my kids and wife to Charlottesville to see Monticello and the University Lawn, which I think is the best architecture in the U.S., easily surpassing Frank Lloyd Wright's Falling Water, which comes in a distant second, they all felt suffocation instead. Even the hotel receptionist questioned us, "Why do you visit here from California?" After the university, I was saved by the free enterprises, where I have been treated fairly and with respect. Throughout my career as an engineer, a manager, and a lawyer, to name a few, I have been so selflessly helped by so many that it's really unfair for me to name any, so I purposely mentioned none here. Outside the self-labeled ivory tower, which is really hell, this is a great country. The simple rule I happen to follow is simple. If I do the right things, everything else will line up nicely, all by themselves. For those who say that I am a rightist or a conservative, I disagree. You know that once Nancy Pelosi told me that her office was my office and her secretary was my secretary? Ted Kennedy once wrote me a long and dear handwritten letter. 30 years ago, Nancy was a warm and sweet lady and had my respect. Now she is with the devils trying to send this country down the toilet. I heard that she bought a house in Florida in preparation for her retirement. She thought that California is no longer fit for her to live. I don't know what happened to her. My guess is that she pursued power and money instead of right or wrong. Her move to Florida shows that she knows right and wrong. I'm so sorry to see her turning out this way. Okay, this is not where I want to go when I started the program, but just like painting, I live by happy accidents these days. I call myself in this order: a mathematician, a physicist, an engineer, a product development manager, and lastly, a lawyer. Not at all an academic. Now, I am an aspiring artist. To those who have high hopes for me, I may have let them down, but I haven't disappointed myself, as I'm happy, content, and able to say that I have never sold my soul to the devil for power, money, vanity, or anything else. That has to be good enough in this day of age. I'm able to, without fear, follow the truth wherever it may lead, nor to tolerate any error so long as a reason is left to combat it. And if I may continue quoting Yeats, I'm able to think that surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. Thank you for spending time with me during this holiday season. If you don't mind, leave a comment saying that you've got this far. For my popularity, may I expect 3? Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. I'll see you in 2022.